We were walking up, I guess that's First Street, to the Library of Congress to head to school, and I remember thinking, gosh, it's so pretty out. And then when we got out of school around 9, because we got out early for the House to be in session, we usually got out around 11, but we got out around 9, and we were walking across First Street to the Capitol. I distinctly remember turning to one of my friends and saying, it's going to be a great day, look at this beautiful weather.
I was walking across Capitol Hill over to the House side to my office in the Cannon building, and on my way over my cell phone rang, and it was my chief of staff who had said that there was a plane that had flown into one of the towers at the World Trade Center. And of course, my district in New Jersey, from part of my district in New Jersey, you can see the Manhattan skyline. So many of my constituents worked in New York City, worked in the financial district, many of whom even worked in the Twin Towers. So that was obviously a grave concern, because we thought there was a plane that had accidentally been flown into the towers.
And everyone was huddled around the cloakroom and watching the result of the plane having flown into the first tower. And of course it was terrifying, and we were all commenting on it. And as we stood there watching, the second plane went in. That put the whole Democratic cloakroom into a whole different mode, because clearly this was not a coincidence. I left the cloakroom, went back around to the dais, and told the House parliamentarian, John Sullivan, who was on duty that morning, that something really wrong was happening in New York. He subsequently whispered to the Speaker pro tempore, who recessed the House.
The House having recessed until 10 a.m. and the House having invited a guest chaplain to do the opening prayer, at 9:52, the Speaker was in the chamber 8 minutes before the scheduled reconvening, with no explicit authority to reconvene any earlier than that. And Porter Goss happened to be in the chamber, and the Speaker asked him to preside just long enough to declare the House in an indefinite emergency recess. And so we put some words together to the effect that the recess was being called on an emergency basis prior to the reconvening time. He recognized the guest chaplain.
God of peace and life, send your Spirit to heal our country. Bring consolation to all injured today in today's tragedy, New York and Washington. Protect us and help our leaders to lead us out of this moment of crisis to a new day of peace. Amen. And of course, I read the prayer, and the gavel was hit, and they were dismissed, but there were only a sprinkling of people in the House that day.
And then Goss immediately declared the recess, which lasted for 24 hours and 10 minutes until the next morning, the 12th, at 10:15, whatever the reconvening time was. But Hastert, as soon as he saw Goss take the chair, was immediately ushered out of the chamber to an undisclosed place.
We were ushered into the facility, which was your typical Cold War type bomb shelter. And we went deep into it. There was obviously preparations for us to stay for a long while if we had to.
And while we were at the secure location, I was sort of, the main thing that struck me there was that our main source of information really was CNN still. I mean, we sat in a room, and it was the top leaders of the House and the Senate together down through the whips, and we watched CNN.
With that, they had the briefing, and on speakerphone, Senate and House, and said that they were going to come back at 6 in NewsHour, and but we should all leave. And members said, we're not going to leave. We're not going to be a government in flight. We're going to stay here.
I remember we took a helicopter ride back from the secure location, the beautiful Virginia sunset, beautiful day, and seeing kind of the flames kind of still leaping up from the Pentagon. It was really quite a sight, and quite emotional. And we ended up taking the helicopter, landing on the Capitol lawn, and seeing this beautiful sunset, and the kind of, before the Capitol was guarded by just plainclothes cops. There wasn't the big machine guns or anything like that. We arrive, and it had really become a fortress, and it was very odd to see that, and somewhat jarring that we were kind of entering a new era of American life. And so the helicopters land on the Capitol lawn, and we disembark, and we get ready to do this press conference.
There were a couple of short speeches, and someone started singing "God Bless America," and the rest of the people joined in. The rest of the members of Congress joined in, and it was such an affirming act, a very simple but very affirming act. And because it was broadcast, people around the United States and around the world knew that the Congress of the United States was not terrorized, was not cowering, was not without plan, and was able to come together and was able to act that very day.